Giles Brown.
Let's talk.
Picnic on Craggy Island. The surreal joys of producing Father Ted 3 decades after it first appeared on screen. Father Ted is still cherished, quoted, and endlessly re-watched. And the woman behind it, Lisa Evans, was a producer of the second and third series. 3 years hovering anxiously over every moment. I'm delighted to say that she joins me live on the line, not from Craggy Island, but from probably somewhere just as nice. Good morning to you. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Morning. My pleasure.
It's good grief. 3 decades. Another thing about time going fine when you're having fun. But isn't it just wonderful the way that you can still go on, and people will know exactly what you're talking about?
Yes, it's not left the public consciousness at all. It's absolutely astonishing. If you Google, Father Ted, people would just be talking about it all the time and referring to it all the time. It's absolutely extraordinary.
So how did you get involved with Father Ted? And just explain to the listeners a little bit about your role and where you came on board.
Okay, I was a comedy producer and I was working at a company called Hat Trick, and I was making Room 101 at the time. And there was a producer there called Jeffrey Perkins, who was absolutely brilliant, who was behind many of the great comedy shows of the 80s and 90s. And he was showing around a script that he had, which was a script called Think Fast, Father Ted. And he was going to make a series about these 3 priests. And I read the script and I sort of fell in love, really. I mean, it was the funniest script I'd ever seen. I was a comedy producer. I was always looking for the perfect script, and I read it and I just adored it, and I became a sort of super fan of the first series. I was nothing to do with the first series, but I remember anxiously watching the rushes come in and thinking, oh, thank God they cast exactly the right people. And I'd fangirl Dermot Morgan at a party, rather startled, I think he was. And then I was just carrying on with my normal work, and then Jeffrey phoned me one day and said that he had taken a job as head of comedy at BBC, and would I want to carry on and be the next Father Ted producer? So, super fan got her reward, really.
Yeah, but quite daunting all the same, because obviously it's one thing being a super fan and going, this is brilliant, and then, careful what and you're probably thinking, gosh, I wish I'd had that job, but careful what you wish for.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was an experienced producer, but I hadn't actually produced a sitcom for television before. And I felt the responsibility enormously because I loved that show and I loved everything about it and I loved the scripts. And I spent a lot of time over those 3 years angsting. Jeffrey was a very laid-back person, whereas I was the complete opposite and spent my entire time worried that it wouldn't be as funny on screen as it was the script. That was the thing that hovered over me. Could I help to make it as funny on screen? And the other thing,
of course, is you might have a first series that takes off, but it's like difficult second album syndrome, isn't it? Because
well, you think that, but in fact, as soon as the scripts started coming in, they were marvellous. And in fact, the first script I'd ever seen, which is called Think Fast, Father Ted, which is about a raffle, a terrible raffle where Ted and Doo get given a car and they wreck it. That was deemed too difficult to do for the first series, too complicated. So in fact, that first script that I'd seen and fallen in love with was actually in the first series that I produced. So in fact, the scripts were absolutely brilliant. So as soon as they started coming in, I knew that it could be as good, if not better, than the first series.
And it's one of those things, isn't it? Because if you said, okay, I'm going to write a comedy about 3 Catholic Irish priests on an island with a manic housekeeper, and they, people go, well, no, that's not going to work. We like our comedy to be sort of, up two down, or whatever, with household names.
Well, except at its heart, it is a character-based comedy. It's a family. It's a dysfunctional family. And, most of us have one of those. So, it's 3 generations of dysfunctional family.
So, I mean, what was the first day like then? I mean, talk me through the process and are there script reads? I mean, how did sort of Father Ted develop? Because we all think they just walked on and off they went. I mean, I know they're all outstanding talents, but
no, the scripts would start coming in, and as they came in, I would start together with a huge team, work out, how they would be done, how many new actors we would need, where we would have to shoot the stunts and things. And then what would happen was there would be a table read through with everybody there reading it. And then we would go on location for 3, or in fact, in the last series, 4 weeks to County Clare in the west of Ireland. And for some reason to do with the schedule, we were always there in December when there's about, 10 minutes of daylight. So it was freezing and raining most of the time. And then we would do all the outside stuff, all the stuff that could only be done, away from studio. And then we would package all that up. And then we would get back to London and we'd start rehearsals. And it was 1 show per week, rehearse Monday to Thursday, do it in studio on Friday. And when you were in the studio, all the outside bits would have been packaged up. So the audience would see the episode exactly as it was on the page. They would see the indoor stuff in front of them and they would see the outdoor stuff played in on screens. So they were seeing a whole episode.
Oh, wonderful.
So it was really busy, and we were also editing at the same time because it was going out only 2 weeks after the after the studio. It was so busy. My God, you do the rehearsals Monday, Thursday, studios Friday, edit Saturday, and it would go out about 10 days later.
And you just presumably collapse. You go out Saturday night, and then collapse and not surface again until Monday.
Yeah, more or less, yeah. Some days we're just lying there, just staring at the ceiling.
But I suppose, in a way, that manic energy, because now you'd be faffing around with, edits and CGI or whatever else and things like that. Yeah. But it is that kinetic energy. It is that build-up. And when you see, stuff, because, obviously I'm born in 68, so therefore I'm growing up with all that sort of live studio audience sort of stuff that we're used to, and it brings that tension, that creative tension, because you're working, rather than sort of we got sort of a couple of months to get this together.
Well, that's right. No, it was really thrilling. You had to get it right on the night. There wasn't much we could do with 10 days between studio and it going out. All you could do was tweak the sound a bit and, get it down to length and put on some music and things. And that was it. That was the only thing you were doing to it at that stage. So it was very, very exciting. It was really exciting because it was so huge and everybody working on it was part of something which was so celebrated and people loved so much. It was very exciting to be part of.
What's it like to be the centre of, because it was, I remember people rushing back, it was across the board. It was from Polytechnic University students, through to little old ladies, I don't know, in Dumfriesshire, we're liking it on different levels. What's it like to be at the centre of that storm? Is it's in the nicest way when it's, people are raving about it? How do you keep it yourself in check?
Well, just because it was such hard work, but it was thrilling as well because you knew you were part of something that was so good and was going to last. And I put in the book that could I predicted that 30 years later, saying I worked on Father Ted will be one of my proudest boasts. And I could. Because it really was that good. So it was thrilling. But there was a time when it was just up for award after award and we would turn up the award ceremony and the writers would win and then we'd get away again. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I was so proud to be on it. I got lucky and I wanted to do my best for it.
And so, how big were the trailers at the end, and the stars, with their people, their retinue, call me, we'll do lunch.
You're out of your mind. We were in a muddy field in Ireland. The trailers were about the size of a small van that sells fish and chips. There was nothing luxurious about shooting Father Ted, I tell you.
I'm just thinking about that because, the untold glamour, because I've worked on a few productions, the untold glamour of making cheese and ham sandwiches at, 2:00 in the morning, and you're in the west of Ireland in December, the weather's not great, and, there's livestock issues, aren't there, and prop issues and all that sort of stuff outside.
Yeah. We were shooting many of the outdoor scenes. The parochial house is actually a working farm and with a lovely family living there. And in the third series, it rained so much that the area in front of the parochial house just became a swamp, just a muddy swamp. And the farmer very kindly went and cut some long grass and we scattered it over it so that it looked from a distance vaguely as if there was grass there. But for instance, if a car drew up, there was a scene where a milk float has to draw up in front of the house. Well, there's no way. It was about 6 inches of mud. So if you just widened the shot a little bit, you'd see half the crew actually pushing the milk float in front of the camera. It was the opposite of glamour. It really was.
And there's a mention of lusty rabbits. Now, I can't let that one... I mean, No? I mean, is this one of these tales that shouldn't be told, sort of backstage antics?
Well, it was predictable, I suppose. It was an episode in which there is a plague of rabbits at the parochial house, coincident with the bishop, Brennan, who is phobic about rabbits coming to the house, typical plot, really. Yeah. And so we shot it in studio, and we basically had, I think, 50 pairs of rabbits. There were so many. These brilliant stage manager, who was a very lovely, calm woman called Mary Mature, marshalled her team.
Mary Mature? That's a great name for somebody working in TV production. That's the best name.
And she really was. She's a tremendous woman. And we blocked off the front of there was a little sort of barrier in front of the living room set, and there were just rabbits all over it. And the thing is about rabbits, they basically do three things. They hop, they wee, they have sex. And they did all those things all the time throughout every scene. And honestly, we could have had a pair of shagging rabbits in every single shot. They were everywhere all the time. It was absolutely, well, it wasn't explored. It was totally predictable, but quite difficult to shoot, And
how much, how much... Because, people will think that they know the characters, or they know the people behind the characters. And it can be very difficult for the actors and the performers to say, actually, I'm not Father, I'm actually a person.
Oh, I see. No, none of them were anything like it. I suppose Dermot did have the fizzing energy of Father Ted. He really did. He was somebody who could barely keep still. He was full of buzzing energy. So there was that crossover, I suppose. But, Father Jack, Frank Kelly, was a cultured, urbane, very clean man, delightful, like a country house host. He was a theatre actor, married to an academic, And then Ardle Dougal is obviously an extremely intelligent man, very laid back, very calm. And again, Pauline, Mrs. Doyle, is the most amiable, kindest person. And nothing like, actually. Nothing like. Apart from Dermot, maybe a tiny bit.
Father Jack was my favourite because it's just, when he went into the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting by mistake and all he heard was, that was just...
That's one of my favourite gags where one of the members of the meeting catches up with him afterwards, having a drink. Yeah. Yes, it was... he was fantastic and everybody loved him, and he looked so disgusting in makeup. He rivers of wax coming from his ears and a dull contact lens, but everybody loved him. And when we were shooting at the parochial house, the little local school with about 10 kids came to watch the location, and I warned Frank in advance, and they all waited outside his trailer, and he burst out the trailer and shouted at them, and they all screamed and ran away. And it was really fantastic, and he was such a good actor. All he had to do most of the time was sit in an armchair and wait for about 3/4 of an hour to make sure he didn't miss the cue of shouting, women's knickers at the right point.
Did you ever run into any trouble with, the clergy themselves over there? Because, they were a little bit conservative over there at that point.
Absolutely. Not directly, but I do remember we were shooting a funeral that Dougal is supposed to be conducting. It's one of those scenes that lasts about 5 seconds on screen, but it was a whole morning's work because you just cut away to Dougal doing a funeral, and there's a hearse kind of halfway into a grave, and it explodes, and there's flame and people. And we did it in a graveyard in Ennistimon, which was where we were based on location. And the whole of Ennistimon came out to watch, and there was a big crowd there, and I went over to talk to them, mainly to ask if they could try and not laugh while the camera was running. And there were 2 elderly ladies there, and I asked them whether they were Ted fans, and they said, "Oh, no. Our priest says we're not to watch it. We're not to watch it." They managed to come out and watch the scene being filmed.
It must be quite bittersweet to actually. It's a wonderful experience, but it must be quite bittersweet to put this all down because they're no longer with us and all that.
So it's not left my head though. The reason I wrote it really was because I was supposed to be interviewing Ardle at a literary festival a couple of years ago, and just at the last minute he'd come in directly over from Ireland to talk about his book, and his plane was cancelled, and they had an hour's gap, and I said, "Oh well, why don't I just go and talk about Father Ted?" And I went on stage and I introduced myself and then said, "I haven't got anything planned." just name an episode and I'll tell you everything I remember about it. And an hour later, they were still naming episodes and I was still remembering. I realised how much I remembered, and it was actually rather nice, really. And it's very easy to write. I mean, I normally write fiction. I cannot tell you how much easier it is to write something you've actually lived through.
So, what are you hoping that? I mean, this is kind of a book for the fan base, but also
it's a book for the fans.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, and I wrote it for fans. Yeah.
And what are you hoping that people? But they're hoping that people get that sort of like peek behind the curtain, then, and how what.
Yes, I think they'll be able to watch it anew, really, because you get little extras that you can see. This is the episode that Ardle's wearing a wig in, or this is the episode where Bishop Brennan got weed on by 3,000 rabbits. Or whatever.
I just like the idea that all the rabbits do is hop, wee, and have sex. I think I do too. I think I do 2 out of the 3, and not the third. If there's a favourite moment, is there one for you?
There are almost too many to say, really. Whenever a joke that was brilliant on the page worked perfectly, that was a favourite moment for me. So I suppose there's a moment in Are You Right There, Father Ted, where Ted goes over to another priest's house and the priest says, do you want to see my collection? And they go through a door and they're looking at kind of wartime helmets and things in a cabinet. And the priest shows him a German helmet and then a German gun and then a German uniform. And Ted says, do you have anything from the Allied side? And the priest says, no, I wouldn't really be interested in that. And Ted turns and then the camera cuts wide and he's basically in a Nazi shrine with an eternal flame and a field gun and swastikas hanging down. And that moment, which we shot in studio, but we had great big black curtains in front of the set so the audience couldn't see the gag. And so that moment when it cut wide and the laugh is like a wall, that's very satisfying. You think, that made me laugh on the page and now it's made them laugh properly.
Wonderful. The book is called Picnic on Craggy Island, The Surreal Joys of Producing Father Ted. It's by Lissa Evans. If people want to find you online, and say nice things to you, where's the best place to find you?
I'm on Twitter, Lissa K. Evans.
Well, listen, the book is called...
And I have a website, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
The book is called Picnic on Craggy Island. You can order it via our own virtual website. Listen, thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a huge smile on my face, which I'm going to have all day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.